So Genshin Impact 6.5 will be coming out with 4 characters that are all pretty interesting. The thing is, choosing between these characters can be hard because you're not only choosing the character themselves, it's almost like you're picking a path that you'll need to follow for a while after choosing 1 or 2 of these characters. Because most of them are gonna sort of like lock you in their side of the meta. In this video, I'll be helping you guys know their pros and cons for each one of them, and hopefully by the end of the video, you'll be able to choose which of them is gonna be the right pick for your specific needs and account. But what you don't need to think too much about is that if you're trying to get any of these 4 characters, the best way to get cheaper Genesis crystals is going to be throughout Topuplive. Topuplive offers top-ups for many games, including Genshin Impact, up to 30% cheaper than official stores. For example, this offer costs $100 on Genshin's official game store, but it only costs $72.86 on Topuplive, allowing you to save more than $27. When you'd want to buy, you'd want to click my link in the description or the pinned comment to make sure you get the best deals possible. Then if you see your country at the top, for example here you have USA, then you'd want to click it. If not, you can just use the global one. Then just click the offer you want, type your user ID and region, then click on buy now, pay, and Genesis crystals will shortly be on your account. It also uses PCI security, which means it's 100% safe. And you can also get an additional 12% off by using my code Camilo. Use the link in the description or the pinned comment to find those great deals at Topuplive. Alright, so back to the video, starting off with the newest addition out of these 4 characters, which is going to be Linnea. Linnea is going to be a Geo/Lunar Crystallized support / sub DPS. That's mainly going to be her role. If we're talking about her pros, the first pro is that she's going to be a Lunar Crystallized enabler and buffer at the same time. She has the ability to allow you to turn normal Geo plus Hydro Crystallized reactions to Lunar Crystallized reactions and also buff them. And that's going to help a lot of normal Geo characters and open up Lunar Crystallized teams possibilities for them. And it's also going to open up like wheelchair comps where you can turn basically any Geo main DPS into a Lunar Crystallized main DPS. So that's going to be pretty good, while also maintaining the ability to just buff Lunar Crystallized characters, obviously. The second pro about Linnea is that she's going to have great off-field damage of her own. She's able to deal huge amounts of damage just from her nukes from her elemental skill, and also she self-buffs herself most of the time, so she's one of the greatest sub DPSs we've seen in a while. The third pro about Linnea is that she's going to have great utility and support in general. On top of buffing Lunar Crystallized reactions, her kit does offer a lot more. She offers resistance shred to both Geo and Hydro. She offers you healing from her elemental bursts. She offers you elemental mastery buffs to herself and also your party members from her passive. So she definitely offers a lot of things from her kit. Also, most of these are going to simply just scale with her defense, which takes me to my last point about Linnea, is that she's going to be pretty free-to-play friendly. As I said before, most of her buffs and also her damage is just going to scale with defense, which is usually an easier stat to get. So you just need to build defense and crit, and that's pretty much it. Also, her being able to scale with defense instead of attack allows 3-star weapon options to be super good options for her. They might even rival some 5-star options, so nobody needs to worry about which weapon they need to use under Linnea. You just slap in like the sharpshooters, for example, or something like that, and you have a weapon without really needing to do anything. I did a weapons tier list before if you want to check it out, but in general, Linnea is going to be one of the best free-to-play friendly characters we've seen in a while. For her cons, the first one is obviously that she's going to be niche to Geo/Lunar Crystallized, so she's mainly just a support for Geo/Hydro characters. Outside of that, she won't really be that great. Other like Geo supports, for example, like Shilonin, are definitely going to have greater global value in terms of like being a better generalist support for your account. Linnea is more specific to just like Geo Hydro teams, that's it. And honestly, her value without you having Zibai or Columbina is going to drop a significant amount, because those are the characters where she shines the most with, where she's able to like fully display all of her supportive capabilities. Without those characters, she still buffs your other Geo main DPSs, but in general, it's gonna be less of a considerable buff. So she won't be as like super good as with Zibai and Columbina. So if you want to get her, it's mainly if you have Zibai, preferably with Columbina. If not, her value becomes debatable. The second con about her, which is a con but not a big one, is that she does have bad vertical investment. What I mean by that is that you getting like stuff for her is not really gonna make her much better. So she is free to play friendly, as I said before. She is pretty good at C0, but her ceiling is not that high. So even if you get like a lot of her constellations, her weapon, for example, refinements and stuff like that, she won't really exponentially get better. She does get slightly better, but a lot of her constellations are not that great, except like C2. Most of them don't really change anything fundamental about her kit or what she offers in general. They're just gonna mainly increase her damage, and that's pretty much it. It's probably better to just get her at C0, get a 3-star weapon, and you're good. That's not necessarily a bad thing, obviously, especially if you're not a big spender. defender. But it's also kind of a con knowing that you won't really be to like get an upgrade for her and then immediately upgrade all of your teams in the future if she reruns or something like that. So that's something to consider. Moving on to the second character we have on this banner, which is going to be Chasca. Chasca came out a long while ago in Natlin, and when she came out, she was like a top 3, I think, main DPS at the time, or like top 2 or something like that, but she definitely was at the top. Right now, the story might have changed a little bit. Starting off with her pros, it's the pros that she always had. She's going to be pretty versatile. Obviously, you'll need to have 2 Pyro, Hydro, Electro, Cryo characters, or 3 preferably on your team for her to function properly, but that's still a broad range of teams in general. She can still work with many supports, many buffers, many sub DPSs, while also being able to apply those elements herself. That's going to make her very versatile, especially against enemies who require like specific elements to break shields and stuff like that. She's going to be one of the greatest characters in terms of like versatility. The second pro about Chasca is that she's going to be pretty easy to play. You basically just need to hold your charge attack and then she's going to auto charge, auto apply elements, auto target. You'll also be hovering on the sky, so it's pretty hard for you to be hit. So she's one of the easiest characters to play, honestly. Her kit is complicated, don't get me wrong, but in terms of like what you need to actually do, it's very simple. Just get your teams, do your buffs, hover, and then shoot enemies. That's pretty much it. So if you want like an autopilot character that you just need to clear with fast stuff and stuff like that, she's a great character for that. Alright, so now moving on to her cons. Her only con, which is still a big con for main DPS in my opinion, is that her damage is gonna be kind of mid for these days. As I said before, when she came out, she was a top tier character for sure, like she was an S tier main DPS, but at this point in the game right now, we just had like 6 main DPSs after her, something like that, and all of them are just decisively better. So she's a clear victim of power creep, honestly, and if you just need a main DPS for damage specifically, Chasca is definitely not your best option. Especially at C0, her damage kind of lacks a little bit. Now, you're still probably able to clear with her, especially if you built her pretty well, maybe if you have her weapon, you have good artifacts, good teams, and stuff like that, but in general, she's not like amongst the best damage dealers that we have in the game right now, and if you just want a character for damage, then Chasca is far from being your best option. And for a main DPS, whose main objective is just to deal damage, that's sort of a big con in my opinion. Alright, now moving on to Lauma. Lauma is just going to be a Dendro / Lunar Bloom sub DPS / support / buffer, just whatever. For her pros is that she's going to have pretty good and easy off-field damage of her own. I mean, just skill and then move, and her skill is still going to be applying damage. It also lasts for a pretty long period, and she definitely deals good amounts of damage of her own off-field. So she can definitely be played in like wheelchair comps, where you can just like put her in with a driver, and she's going to be sort of like carrying the team, which is pretty good. The second pro about her is going to be the Hydro and Dendro Resistance Shred. That's great utility. Resistance Shred is always like one of the best buffs you can get from any characters, so her being able to provide them is just going to buff her teams by quite a bit, which is pretty good. Last pro about Lauma is that she's going to be a good support for both Lunar Bloom and normal Dendro reactions. Obviously, her main priority is going to be just Lunar Bloom teams, where she deals Lunar Bloom damage herself. She also buffs stat damage and also enables it. But another big thing about her is that even if you're playing her alone in a team where no other not cry characters exist, she still allows Bloom, Hyper Bloom, and Burgeon reactions to crit. It automatically gives them 15% crit rate and 100% crit damage and allows them to deal crit hits. And that's definitely going to be a huge buff for teams that rely on those reactions to deal damage. So yeah, obviously she's preferably played in just like Lunar Bloom teams with another not cry character to just fully allow the Lunar Bloom damage to crit. But even outside of those teams, she's still a huge help, and she can definitely uplift a lot of old just like Bloom teams with Nilu and Nida and stuff like that, and make them much better just by allowing them to crit, which is pretty good. Now, moving on to her cons, she doesn't really have any big ones, but she does have a couple. The first one is going to be high energy requirements. At least in some teams, you'll need to build a pretty significant amount of synergy to be able to burst on uptime, which might force you to build less elemental mastery, which she relies on a lot. So that's one of her biggest cons in my opinion. She can be a little hard to build, and it's mainly due to energy restrictions. The second con is that her buffs to normal Dendro reactions is going to be limited. So every time you deal a hit, it's going to take sort of like a stack. So in AoE scenarios, where you'll be basically consuming multiple stats if it hits multiple enemies, you can just run out of stacks faster, which is not the best thing. So that's like a minor con too. The last one, that's actually the biggest one in my opinion, is that she doesn't heal at C0. You'll need her C1 to unlock Lauma's healing, which in her type of teams specifically is pretty necessary. So she's going to be much better if she was able to heal, because she's going to allow you to free up the healer slot and just use another support or sub DPS or whatever. But at C0, she won't be able to do that, so you're forced to use another healer. And that's going to be the case in like 90% of her teams. So honestly, that feature being locked behind C1 is kind of a bummer for her. She would have been much better if she was able to heal at C0. Even if the heals were small, it would have made her exponentially better. But unfortunately, it's locked behind C1. At C0, you'll need to play a dedicated healer for her teams to function properly. Alright, now moving on to Nefer, this is going to be a quick character, honestly. The pros, huge damage. Nefer is like top 2 right now in the damage, depending on how you calculate and consider damage. She might be the best damage dealer we have in the game right now, in terms of like top teams with slight investment. So yeah, her damage ceiling is going to be super huge. And honestly, for her pros, we probably should just stop there. Because as I always say, for a main DPS, that's basically everything you need. If they're able to deal enough damage, then you don't really have much room to complain. For her cons, they're going to be pretty expected with a main DPS of this caliber. Mainly is that she's going to be kind of restricted. She's going to need Lauma for her to unlock her full potential. Lauma is going to be not necessary, but definitely a huge upgrade for Nefer. And without Lauma, she won't be that special, honestly. And her damage ceiling is definitely going to drop by a lot. She's going to help you gain stacks, provide a resistance shred, and they're just going to synergize too well together for you to not play them. She's definitely still playable with other characters like Nahida, for example, Aino, and stuff like that, but getting Columbina and Lauma is going to be essential for her to be like considered one of the top DPSs in the game. Without them, she's going to fall pretty significantly. You just have a huge damage ceiling with Nefer, but it's also limited teams, a bit of a complex playstyle, and you need certain characters. But honestly, it's a fair trade-off if you just want a strong main DPS. Alright, now moving on to the final conclusion, which character should you get out of these? So first of all, if you have Zibai and Columbina, or you have a Geo main DPS that you just want to revive, in that case, obviously you'll need to grab Linnea, especially if you have Zibai and Columbina. Honestly, even without Columbina, if you have Zibai, Linnea is definitely going to be one of the greatest upgrades you can get for her. The buffs she gives are going to be too good, and you definitely don't want to miss out on them if you have Zibai as your main DPS. So she's going to be a clear upgrade, and as I said before, even if you have characters like Navia, for example, Noelle, Ito, and stuff like that, and you also have Columbina. With these characters, Columbina is going to be needed. You can play them in sort of like wheelchair comps with Linnea, Columbina, and then the main DPS, and then someone like Fiorina, for example, or whatever. And their teams are going to be dealing pretty decent damage, like comparable to the current DPS standards. They're going to be wheelchaired, obviously. Linnea and Columbina are going to be like the main pillars of the team. But if you still want to use like your Noelle, for example, or something like that, then this is a valid reason to get Linnea too. But outside of Zibai mainly, and you really wanted to revive older Geo main DPSs, Linnea is not recommended. If you just want a strong main DPS team, I would recommend getting Nefer and Lauma together, and I just put them next to each other because it's almost necessary for you to get both of them. Honestly, getting Nefer without Lauma is not going to be that interesting. It's not necessary, like I don't want to say it's necessary, but it's almost necessary. Like the damage drop is going to be pretty significant, so if you're getting Nefer, you definitely want to manage to get Lauma in any way or the other. Obviously, them being on the same banner kind of sucks, but that's just the way it is. So if you just want a reliable main DPS team base, that's probably not going to be power crept anytime soon, at least we hope at this point, I don't know. So getting Nefer and Lauma is definitely going to be a great investment if you just simply want a strong main DPS. And Chasca is honestly a clear skip in this batch. Unless you really like her, it's probably not recommended. Even at this point in the game, she's pretty power crept, and in the future, she's probably going to be even more power crept. So unless some new support or whatever just comes out to save her, she won't really be a great investment for your account. But yeah, that was the video, guys. Tell me which characters you guys are getting. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. See you guys in the next video. Peace.